Well, thanks for joining us, and it's a segment AM Talk, and I have here with me two lawyers, two great lawyers, and let me just introduce my extreme left, Philip Addison. You all know him from the election petition case from 2013, and currently we know that he is an aspiring parliamentary candidate for the MPP. He's actually, you're actually one of the candidates. You've been cleared, right? Okay, so Philip Addison is going to contest that very seat at the primary level for the MPP. That is creditably, and I've been right about the name. And we know that, they have been cleared to convene that very meeting as far as the election by the delegates to elect one of them, one of two or three, depending on when the clearance is given for the other, for the 28th of this very month, and then we can have the rest of those finishing up as far as that is concerned. I have Abraham Amaliba, is also a legal practitioner, also from the election petition case, doing the summaries for us, for the media, and doing the interpretations, also member of the NDC's legal team, and a law lecturer as well. His constituency, that's where originally he comes from, is Bolga Central. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thanks for joining me, sir. It's a privilege. This is the first time I'm hosting you, so I'm very much happy to have you. The chairman of the Electoral Commission, Dr.Afari Gyan, early Monday morning took a graceful bow from the commission when he met his staff to bid them farewell at a brief debate. We know that while sources at the EC would rather confirm or not confirm the exact date of his official exit, they were also very scant with information on the brief debate as well. But we know that the basic thing is exiting, what has been the legacies. We know that following those election petition issues, there were calls for reforms, etc. And it's important that we have the two of them in the studio. We'll have a lengthy discussion on the subject. What do you make of Dr.Afari Gyan's whole tenure in office as AEC chairman?
Well, I think he's done his bit and is now leaving the stage. And he has handled quite a number of elections, and we should not lose sight of that. And I believe those elections, apart from one or two complaints, have by and large been accepted. It's his last elections that has created a lot of problems, and unfortunately that is his last, and so there will be no room for any amendment, and therefore on the balance, well, we'll give him the credit that he's done creditably well. Yes.
W on a scale of 1 to 10? I had 8 the other day. Let me test yours.
You had 8
from somewhere, not you.
Oh. I'll be very charitable, and I'll give him 7.
Okay, 7. All right, that's being charitable. Good. And you also, what do you think about the tenure of the Electoral Commissioner, the chairman of the commission? Over the last couple of years, he's been there.
Yes.
And you also have been very much deeply involved as far as call for reforms, etc., because of your participation in the petition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me say, Afari Gyan has contributed immensely to the democratic forward march under this 4th Republican Constitution. Don't forget that he has presided over 5 different elections. And in these elections, you've had a sitting government lose elections and opposition come to power, and vice versa. He has demonstrated his ability to steer the EC in such a way as to not to compromise it. And so it is time for him to bow out. I can only wish him well. I think that on the whole, if you consider the number of elections he has presided over, one can say that he's had a successful tenure of office at the EC. And I'm of the view that Afari Gyan needs to be hailed for his ability to keep the nation intact at a time when people were of the view that some elections were nearly going to drive us into chaos. He's been able to steer the ship out of the troubled waters. And I think that he's one man that we need to give some honors. If there's going to be an honor of the voter, I think that he's one of the candidates I will propose to be a recipient of the order of the voter. Yeah.
Well, Philip, as far as we're concerned, the reforms are critical. Which ones do you think are foremostly important for us to tackle ultimately before we hit December, and ultimately also before we get to 2016 December?
I think the foremost reform is the register itself. We need to have a completely new register. There's so many issues with the current register, and I think the only way forward is for us to have a completely new registration. We also the double registration, the impersonations and so on that went on in the last election. So for any elections to be credible, the first starting point is the register. And I think so much has been said about it. And now that Dr.Afari Gyan is going, I hope that the incoming Electoral Commissioner will see to that as a priority and work on that. We still have time. We have 1.5 years to go. So there's sufficient time to get this thing done.
I want you to speak up a bit for me. Now, as I ask you a follow-up, the critical thing about the register is that not everybody agrees as far as the political structures are concerned, who are key stakeholders, that we need to have a new register. If we feel there's something wrong with the register, why not purge it instead of saying we should have a completely new register? What do you say to that?
Well, there's so many issues with the register. That is why any attempt at even trying to correct them will not amount to much. You can see clearly those who are for the register being maintained as it is. And it is those who are beneficiaries of this register that was used in the last elections. But quite clearly, I think that most of the political parties have said that there is a need to compile a new register. And I believe that if we go by the majority, then that is what should be the case. I do not see why there should be any difficulty in the compilation of a new register. You heard quite recently that there was an attempt to open up the register new members and so on, which was stopped midway. First of all, this registration started on the quiet. Nobody was informed officially. And then when it came out, they were forced to stop the registration. Now, all these things goes to fuel the suspicion that this register has been packed. As it is now, as we sit here, we do not know whether these new registrations have actually been included in the register up to the point that they stopped. We can't tell.
No, that's a case. Yeah.
Yes. So that is why we are saying that let's start afresh. Let's wipe the slate so we start and have a new register for the next elections.
It should that be the case, because we know you have a vehicle, you have a medium of communicating with the Electoral Commission, which is the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, the IPA. So
I don't know how a register can be of benefit to one political party and be a disadvantage to the other. I am not sure that a register would deliberately be packed by supporters of one political party. So if the call is that we should have an entirely new register, I go for it. It's a legitimate call. But to insinuate that some people are benefiting from a defective, a so-called defective register, I disagree with Philip. I think that there are ways by which we can clean that register.
How?
The EC there are rules and regulations. If you are talking about dead people and their names are still there, there's a way you can expunge that. If you are talking about juveniles or infants who have found their name in there, there's a way you can fill a form to protest against certain. So there are ways by which we can clean that register. I do not think that the things that he's talking about, I don't think that when we have an entirely new register, it will be devoid of those things. If you allow infants to go and queue up and register, as we saw in the last registration exercise, where children were buzzed to go and register, then you find their names in there. And once their names are there in the register, it is a proof that they are qualified to register, unless you go through the process of expunging their names. So an entirely new register would not be devoid of the complaints that we have.
Well, true. But having an entire newly registered people in a newly compiled register wouldn't be wrong either. At least that will make sure you smooth whatever the differences are.
And I'm saying that...
And the challenges that the parties have with the current register.
And I'm saying that there's always a period that the EC exhibits the register and call on people to come and verify and assist in cleaning those names. So I don't see the need for any new register. But if the call is that there is a need for a new register, I think it's a legitimate call. I may not support it, but to, as it were, say that some people are benefiting from that register, that's where I disagree.
I thought he started by saying he agrees to the call for a new register.
No, I agree
now
that was a legitimate call.
Circle.
No, the call is legitimate.
Withdrawing, because I was going to say
you have
it is quite refreshing to hear somebody, a senior member of your party, now saying that there's no objection to a new register. Unfortunately, at the end of your submission, you now say that you don't quite agree to it. Now, the point is, this issue about cleaning the register, you saw at the petition, even though this register was supposed to have been cleaned and the commissioners could vow that it was perfect, we demonstrated, even with very limited registration for those outside, the overseas registration, that there were duplications.
Of names?
Of names. I mean, there were duplications. We clearly demonstrated that. So I don't know what kind of cleaning had gone on. Quite clearly, this register is bloated and defective. And so the best way forward is for us to have a new one.
But it was also shown that even though there were duplications, it did not mean that they voted twice.
Okay, Philip, how do we get the parties? Because even for the compilation of the current one we have, we're very much instrumental, playing critical roles in the registry. They had their agents there from the community to get to ascertain who is of age or who doesn't live within the area, who doesn't qualify, etc. I mean, just by using those normal specifications that they can have. What role do we need to have the parties playing in this?
Well, the parties have always played the role they're supposed to play. They have agents there and so on. But you see, beyond that, we need to have an electoral commission that is fair, that has integrity. Because without that, no matter the watchdog role of the parties, the things that we are complaining of in this current register will appear in any new register. It is all dependent on the EC that they are going to be fair and act as impartial umpires in this political game. That is the only key. Because no matter the watchdog role, they are going to compile it finally. And if it is they are going to slip in other things, then we can never have a fair register.
Well, among the issues that were raised at the petition, at the case, during the period of the case, was the subject of whether numbers were rightly written, and because they were finally endorsed by whoever the presiding officer would be, and we know representing the Electoral Commission at the end of the day. Now, at what point do we have to say, well, having gone through the processes and because the endorsements have happened, there could be some reversals before we...
Are you talking about the serial numbers?
Well,
that was unanimously...
I'm talking about the... Yes, apart from that, I'm talking also about votes that were tallied, where there were minus zeros or added zeros, etc.
No, what we saw, what the election petition exposed was the inability of some election officers to write or be able to write words into letters. That is, reducing the words into letters. So, for instance, if you have 550, the officers will write 505. So that there was discrepancy between the letters and the numbers. Okay. So then that also goes to tell us one thing, that the caliber of people who were recruited for the exercise were below par. And so there's a need for us to up our game and, as it were, employ those who can do the work. I think that one reason why we had that problem was the non-use of teachers in the last elections, because teachers were not, the education service said that the use of teachers would affect learning time. So what we did was just to pick people on the streets, and this is what we got. And I think that one of the reforms that was proposed by the Supreme Court was to ensure that the EC is able to recruit qualified people to, as it were, monitor and administer the elections. Yes.
The issues about the caliber also being the reasons why we had all those discrepancies on the pink sheets?
Yes, I agree largely to what my colleague has said.
So we need to bring back the teachers? Well, in the case of Nigeria, they brought
well, we have to up it, teachers or even a higher grade. Clearly, the Nigerians learned a lot from our petition, and we can all see the results of that. Yes, the caliber of persons who handle the elections, not only the electoral officers, but even in terms of the polling agents, was very low. So the result was all the kind of discrepancies that we saw on the pink sheets. But that aside, there were also some deliberate attempts to distort figures, which had nothing to do with the literacy or otherwise of the persons involved. But I think that, yes, we have to take people of a higher caliber than we did at the last elections. And that should certainly go a long way in improving the standards of computation of election results.
Throughout the period.
But I think also that in calling for reforms within the EC, the parties themselves must also reform. Because if a party decides to send an illiterate polling agent to go and monitor, what are you expecting? Yeah. So you as a political party must also know that your fortunes lies in the caliber of people you send to the polling stations. Because elections in Ghana here, and that's the beef we had with my colleague here, is won at the polling station and not at the EC headquarters.
But the structures and the regulations need to be right. The supervision also needs to be right.
So if you don't get it right at the polling station, the head office can't do anything about that. So you also, as a political party, must ensure that you send people who are qualified at the polling station.
A good point Abraham is making, and I know throughout the period, is a subject of the competency or not of whoever is heading the Electoral Commission. But we all know the elections start from the grassroots. It's from the grassroots level at the polling station before you collate the result, ultimately before you get to the Electoral Commission here in Accra.
I cannot agree with him more that we need to have polling agents who are competent, because clearly some of the polling agents that manned the polling stations during the last elections did not know what they were about. So to that extent, I agree with him. But you see, at the end of the day, the guarantor of elections is the Electoral Commission and not the parties or the polling agents. So that no matter the quality of polling agents, it should not reflect in the compilation of the results. The results should be guaranteed by the Electoral Commission.
Whether or not
we have.
Yes,
exactly. Because some parties even don't have polling agents there. So does it mean because they don't have agents there, they should be cheated? Anything can be written for them? The guarantor of the elections is the Electoral Commission. So the presiding officer who is representing the Electoral Commission there should ensure that what is put on paper is a true reflection.
But you do agree, because it's a human institution, which is a chain of actions and processes, we need every stakeholder to play a meaningful role.
Yes, but you see, as you yourself said, the elections are won or lost at the polling station. It is what is determined at the polling station that is transmitted along. So when you get it right there, it goes through. When you get it wrong there, it is also transmitted.
So, since the end of that very petition, when we had the outcome, and even, I guess, even within the period of the petition hearing in itself, has been the subject of the competency of the whoever is heading the Electoral Commission, etc. But we know that now he's exiting. Over the last few months, we've had calls as to which personalities, etc. How critical is it for us to have somebody who will be an embodiment of all the, I guess, the criteria or the benchmarks that you, the political parties, and the other critics we have out there would be looking for?
Yeah, you know, in the past, electoral commissioners have been appointed without any fuss. Nobody was really interested in it. You see, so they were appointed as a matter of course by the government of the day, because people trusted in the electoral commissioners and trusted that they would do the right thing, to hold the scales evenly between the parties. It is these last elections and the matters arising out of the petition that has now made everybody very alert as to the role that the Electoral Commission can play in our elections and so on and so forth. And hence, the interest being expressed by everybody in who becomes the next Electoral Commission. I don't think there was so much talk when Dr.Afari Gyan and Justice Afari Gyan were appointed the first time around. There wasn't any much talk because it was taken as a matter of course. But it is these last elections that has made it so important now to determine who it is that becomes the new Electoral Commission.
And do you think, with all the interpretations that has been made to the regulation and the power that gives the mandate to the appointing authority, all those interpretations are justified?
You see, knowing what
how will also that come into play?
Knowing what I know in our electoral processes, I would be interested in going for a competent polling station agent than a competent EC, a chairman. Because he has also indicated
you mean
that
you want a mix of the two?
No. Between the two, if I'm supposed to choose, I would go for a competent polling station agent than a competent EC. Because in the last petition, Afari Gyan said that he didn't even see some of the pink sheets. He has little role to play when it comes to declaration of results. It's garbage in, garbage out. Where does the garbage start? It starts at the polling station. So I, knowing what I know now, I would advocate for a competent polling agent than a competent EC commissioner.
Why would that be? You are a very good chairman. He can do adequate supervision.
No, because the chairman cannot manipulate what is coming from. Because at every stage in the electoral process, you have checks. You have checks at the collation center, from the polling station to the regional office, and then even what is called the strong room, you have party executives there. So the EC chairman is the last to see the results and sign. He cannot sign anything different from what has come through all the processes. But it is proper that we call for an electoral commissioner who is fair, who is candid, and who has integrity. And I think that in our next person, the person we are seeking to become an electoral commissioner, if for nothing at all, he should have the qualities of Afari Gyan, not below that. Because Afari Gyan's tenure has shown that we are able to rely on the EC to provide us with results that are credible. The last election only exposed administrative errors, but did not expose some collusion. They could not show that Afari Gyan colluded with the NDC to do something. These were administrative errors, and I think that with the administrative errors, it calls for only competent people to man the polling.
You definitely should have your views on this.
Oh yes, I mean, I didn't want to go into this area, but he is pushing me into this area. There were more than just administrative errors. First of all, there were 2 sets of pink sheets imported for one election, as a result of which for every polling station there were duplicate pink sheets. One has to ask why these extra pink sheets appeared at all in the election, since we have one full set that could have been used. But they did appear, and we did demonstrate that some of these extra pink sheets were used to declare the results. So that is a matter that clearly goes beyond mere administrative setbacks. It was a deliberate plot to bring in extra pink sheets, and this has never happened before. And that is what was used to facilitate these fraudulent figures, because there are some instances in which when you have extra pink sheets, you can withdraw some pink sheets and then replace it with others and so on. Yes.
And then they will be signed by the...
But there are some pink sheets that were not signed. There were so many that were not signed. That's the issue. It was also a matter we raised, that so many pink sheets...
They were not signed by their polling agents, not by others.
It was not signed by the presiding office. It doesn't matter whether polling agents don't sign it. The Constitution, the laws, everything says it. It doesn't matter.
So it has to be the presiding
officer. It has to be the presiding officer.
Yes.
Yes, and those were not signed.
All right. Okay, you wanted to raise something?
Yes, and I was going to say that, yes, I agree with the point he made that really it doesn't matter who the Electoral Commission, if all the process, subject to there being clarity all along the way. Now, in our situation, at least during the last elections, results were collated at the collation center and entered on a collation sheet. That sheet was never given to the political parties, and I asked why. because that is the sheet that collates all the polling station results. So if the parties had it, there will be no need for a strong room, because really, without the full results, when the results go to the strong room and the representatives there are checking with their headquarters, they themselves are clueless because they don't have that information. So the question we ask is, why is it that that most important document is not given to the parties? Because once that is done, there will be no need for a strong room. I'm sure you agree with me on that, that if we had that document, there will be absolutely no need for a strong room. Yeah. And this is the recommendation that Afari Gyan made to the Nigerians, that this document should be made available to all parties and even observers.
So Afari Gyan made it after all.
So why is it not being done
here?
That
was after his election petition.
Yes.
But I agree with him on that score. That, you know, when he was making the point, I was nodding. That one, I don't know why that document should be sacrosanct. It is for the election purposes. There are stakeholders in the election processes. You need to give them copies. And the judges even said that. I'm sure he called for it. Philip called for it to be exhibited. But the judges refused, turned it down. But in their ruling, some of them expressed regret for not going along with him. So I think that on that score, I agree with him.
There's an issue about the law that mandates the president, whether to on the advice or whatever it is of the Council of State, etc. What's your own view on it? I know it's before the court.
Yeah, because
one gentleman.
This is the point again that I've said. I mean, I think in my earlier remarks, I said this whole interest in the appointment of the Electoral Commission stems from the 2012 elections and the aftermath. But as we have said here, really, if all the processes are clear, there's clarity. Well, it doesn't matter who the Electoral Commission is. There'll be no need for a strong room. Because at the end of the day, when the processes are set up, facilities are set up, everything is clear from one spot to the other.
Well, the processes could be compromised.
No, there's clarity. It cannot be compromised. If there's no clarity, because at a particular point in time somebody withholds vital documents, then there's no clarity. You see, because the problem in our system was that once the collation center has entered the results, there's no clarity. What is sent along to the so-called strong room, nobody knows. And I'm telling you that when results of a particular constituency is declared, you can never know whether it is the true result unless you have the full list of polling station results. If there is even one missing, you cannot tell. You see? So it is important.
So it means you only be at the center, at the main center, you only be approving figures instead of verifying.
Yes, they're just approving figures. Sometimes they call the help to verify, and you don't have the full complement of the.
That's why you need to have your agents too there. And I know that the parties also have always been playing complementary roles.
Yes, but in spite of that, you still have to have the official sheet on which the results are entered, even to make sure that the results, the pink sheet that your party agent has brought to you, has been properly entered. I hope you are with me.
Fantastic, I'm with you.
So that you need that sheet, because sometimes even errors are made in the entry. Errors are made, so you need
and it could be
verify.
identified at that point.
Exactly. Before it is transmitted.
So that it can be, those issues can be ironed out.
Right.
So we come to a certain conclusion.
Right.
All right. So now we've gotten to this very point. And when would you want the reforms to be expedited? Because there have been concerns that we're not hurrying ourselves enough to make sure we do all the implementations necessary.
No, some of the reforms cannot start now. For instance, the training of polling agents cannot start now. It should be some 3 months or maybe some few weeks to the election. You can't train people now waiting for next year. Some are regarding the recommendation from the Supreme Court, some are to do with reducing the amount of information that is on the pink sheet to make it manageable. That one will come when the EC then prints the pink sheet. I think at the IPAC, I'm aware that the political parties have formed a subcommittee and they are looking into those matters. So the reforms will take place and they are coming.
I ask this question because having covered the election for a number of times, I know the concerns, and more seriously echoed in the last election, about when registers are made available, when EC is not calling enough meetings with the parties, etc. So, well, we may not have the actions taking place, but the dialogue at least needs to start and needs to be adequately.
Yes, it needs to, and I think that also, I mean, the parties are to be blamed for some of these lapses on the part of the EC, because, and I can only speak for the MPP from what I know, at least from the last petition, that the party, they don't hold the EC to what the EC was supposed to do under the law, because there are timelines when the register should be given to the parties and so on and so forth. Those things were not adhered to, and nobody complained. And I think that it is important that once we have a law in place that stipulates what is to be done at a particular time, the EC is held to it. It's important that the parties get the register on time so they can scrutinize it and see whatever errors, shortcomings there are in, they can complain to the party. And also the IPAC. I think it's been some kind of informal arrangement. I think it should be formalized. It is important that it is formalized so that the IPAC is consulted on all things to do with the elections. Because at the end of the day, it's the parties that are going to get involved in these elections.
But you know, I've indicated that we need to give legal backing to IPAC. This is your program. I've indicated
yes, you have.
That's the same call it's making.
How about the party agents too?
What sense?
Well, if they can be given some sort of legal role as far as that is.
Oh no, party agents, they just represent the parties
well,
at
I
the
know.
polling station. And you cannot force political parties to send agents there. As we speak, it's even difficult for some political parties to be able to provide. And if you make it a law, then that means you are going to be punishing people for not obeying the law. But I think that IPAC has now become an integral part of our election processes, and IPAC would need to be given some legal backing so that it will not be seen as interfering with the work of the EC. Because the EC also looks at IPAC with a certain eye. Because the EC laws are that the EC is not subject to the control of anybody or institution, it looks at IPAC as a controlling body trying to control it. But if it is given a legal backing, as he's saying, formalized, then EC will be aware that this is also part of the electoral process.
Well, Philip, I talked to the marketing department. We'll surcharge you after my next question. I want to give you a bit of publicity on your foray into mainstream politics now. And it's.
But I thought yesterday there was a protest that was sent to Nana Akufo-Addo regarding him. Maybe he will be the best person.
Oh, well, but you have been cleared by the. Is it the appeals committee?
No. I went for vetting and I was cleared.
Okay, vetting and you were cleared. Yeah. All right. So, Koliklote. Okay. Yeah. Why the interest in that very constituency?
Well, because the constituency I hail from. And I thought that, well, since the MPP is determined to win the 2016 elections, and since we have also said that there will be no more petition, I should find something useful to do for the party. And I thought that my best contribution would be to stand in Koliklote, and hence the decision to take a plunge into politics.
So the delegates, how many of them will decide your fate?
We have about 860 delegates. Yeah.
And you'll be standing alongside. How many people have been cleared by the elections committee?
There are 3 contestants. I'm not aware if it's been reduced, but there are 3 contestants.
Okay. Well, so you've been interacting with them?
Interacting with them?
With your constituent, the delegates, etc. At least you need to go and interact with them.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you're going to get their vote, so you have to interact with them.
Okay. What we heard was that the delegates, sometimes you can trust them. What's your level of trust for them, following your interactions?
Well, what I can say is that the majority of them I trust, and they're on my side. Yes.
Okay. When will the election be convened for your constituent? I think that was the last batch, right?
Well, I hear it's the 27th. I have not had any official confirmation of that, but I have read it in the media. That is the 27th.
Okay. So we wish you well. You wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, but I wanted to find, what is this that we are hearing that Nana Akufo-Addo says that Philip Addison did not inform Nana Akufo-Addo of his desire to
You mean
contest.
those are media speculations or reports?
And that he's unaware that Philip is contesting at Kole Klote because the petition was to the effect that Nana Akufo-Addo was behind him. So will this affect his chances? I am of the view that, considering what I know about him, I'm of the view that he'll be a nice candidate, and the quality for me I can vouch for. But I wish him well.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, what I can say about that is, you see, because I knew these things were going to come up, people are alleging that there's Nana Akufo-Addo who was pushed me. So I did not discuss this whole matter with him. Yes, I took the step and went forward. I did not discuss it because I wanted to insulate him from that attack, that he's the one sponsoring me. I did not discuss it with him. He heard it also.
All right.
That was
you're an independent man. You took your independent decision.
Very much so.
He's his own man.
All right.
Very much
so Philip Addison, we know him over 26 years in the legal profession, practicing fully since 1989, I believe.
88.
Oh, 88. Okay, I even decided to reduce it by 1. It was deliberate, though. But thank you very much, and I hope to have you again sometime in the studio, Philip Addison.
Thank you.
And after you win, then we'll get to have lengthy discussions on the subject. And also Abraham Amaliba, his main constituency, though, where he hails from, is Bolga Central. And so we wish you well as well.
Thank you.
Today, no court for the two of you?
No, that's why we are,
we are
not well.
Friday.
All right.